You can start. Thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, one is one.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is Cathy Sapp.
Yep.
Yesterday, right?
Good afternoon and welcome to all the attendees. We appreciate the attendance of the staff here. We are in the conference room, beginning the meeting. I would like to caution that this meeting is being taped. And please, whenever you are speaking, would you please introduce yourself by name so that we're able to get that in the minutes. Before we go to the meeting, we're going to have Arletta make a presentation. She has a prior commitment and would like to do that before she leaves. Arletta?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, I trust you can hear me. I appreciate your diligence and your patience with us.
Oh, all right. Do you know who it is? Did they put their,
An example of the hot mic.
This is true. Well, woof woof to you too. Okay, so there were some documents that I would have preferred to get out to you earlier in the month. That did not happen. That was completely me. We're getting things on track. We'll get there. Right now, I have a conflict, so I'm going to need to leave briefly, but I want to caution you that some of what is going to be presented today is just, it's a fact of having such a diverse committee. There are people who, like Tim, who have been involved with these issues for decades. And then there are people who are new to it. So for some of you, may feel like we're talking down to you, and that is certainly not the intention. And for those who have been involved with the process for a long time, you know, we can give it to you up here. I'm trying to hit this happy medium. So again, I appreciate your patience and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to go first.
Arletta, thank you. Stevie, you want to do a roll call?
Sure will. Nick Bianchi. Lisa Werner Brand.
Here.
Kinsey Casey.
here,
Darla Cravata. Lloyd Cunningham.
Here.
Dan DeMarco. Patricia DeMarco. Tina Doucet. Darian Ford Graver. Nick Creasock.
Here.
Bob Grimm. Mark Heckman.
Here.
Rebecca Kiernan. Ken Lasata.
Here.
Ruth Ann Ulmer.
Here.
Stanley Paps. Will Pickering.
Here.
Mary Ellen Ramage.
Here.
Tim Rogers.
Present?
Mark Samponia.
Here.
Cathy Sapp.
Present.
Daniele Ventresca.
Here.
Max Unker.
Here.
Okay. A quorum?
We got 11.
Okay. Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll open with the meeting with the possible approval of the minutes from September 15th, 2020. Your pleasure.
Motion to approve, Mary Ellen from Etna.
I
Second.
second that motion, Cathy Sapp.
Motion and a second. Question on the motion? Being called in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
aye,
Opposed? The ayes have it, so ordered. Informational items. Kim, we're going to talk about the tunnel details. You ready?
Yep.
Thank you.
No, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing.
Further up.
KK.
Make host or make co-host.
Okay. Got it. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Okay, good. So,
Yes.
so I am Kim Kennedy. I'm the Director of Engineering and Construction here at ALCOSAN. And we talked last month very briefly about the tunnel. So I wanted to take this opportunity to go into a little bit more detail, how we got to where we got to with the way that we're showing the tunnel now, and a little more detail on each segment. So briefly, I only have, 17 slides, so it's not going to be, this agenda might seem overwhelming, but I wanted to give an update on the journey of the modified consent decree and just give you some high-level schedule dates. Talk about the basis of design report, which we just submitted to the agencies on October 1st. And then, like I said, go through each tunnel segment and some flow statistics, CSO capture statistics, really. A snapshot of our schedule, and then what we like to call the adaptive management timeframe, which really has to do with source control and bringing some other non-gray solutions to the clean water plan. So here we are. This is the schedule that I had mentioned. We started, well, actually EPA in the late 90s put out their CSO control policy. And that's what sort of kicked off everything that's basically happened since then. And in 2000, ALCOSAN received the first draft of the original consent decree. And we negotiated between 2000 and 2008 when we entered into the first consent order, which required development of the wet weather plan. And that wet weather plan was submitted in 2012, 2013. And that kicked off the negotiations of the modified consent decree. So we met with the agencies and went back and forth. What I'm going to talk about today is a lot of Appendix Z, and that really became the framework of defining our projects and how we were going to meet the obligations of the modified consent decree. So we finished the negotiations in 2018, and then in May of 2020, it was entered in US District Court. So I thought this was a good slide to sort of show the progression of how long that we've been working on this. So, like I said, Appendix Z is something that I'm going to talk about in a few slides here, but I sort of wanted to define Appendix Z for you. It's only 9 pages long, so it's an easy read, but it was very integral to the negotiation process, and we really used it as a mechanism to define our projects. And Appendix Z splits the implementation of the Clean Water Plan into 3 phases. And you can see that the phase 1 is associated with the preliminary planning. The preliminary planning is what I talked about last month, and that's what sort of delved into the 10–15% design level of each of the tunnels and really started to look at the engineering aspects of implementation of those projects. And then I think something that we overlooked last month, but we really don't want to overlook, is the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So we've been working on that for several years, and we actually are We've already started the construction of the North End facilities. It's a $100 million job. We started that design in 2018 and awarded it earlier in 2020, and they're on site and working as we speak. And then something that we already finished, which was defined in Appendix Z, the existing infrastructure inspection and rehab. Phase 2 is defined in Appendix Z as taking the wastewater treatment plant capacity up to 600 MGD. And it also includes the Ohio River Tunnel and the associated consolidation sewers with that segment. And then phase 3 would be the Allegheny River Tunnel and the Mon River Tunnel with their associated consolidation sewers. So here's just a quick screenshot of two of the bullets in Appendix Z that will allow you to understand the preliminary planning process. So in Appendix Z, it was dictated to us that ALCOSAN had to procure a preliminary planner by the end of August in 2017, and that team had to prepare and submit the basis of design report by October 1st, 2020. And then another paragraph that I think is important is these dates associated with the ORT. That's the Ohio River Tunnel. And then those are the two stream crossings. So the Chartiers and the Sawmill Run tunnel segments are just those stream crossings that you'll see on the maps. That's all been defined in Appendix Z. And these dates are something that we have to adhere to. So the water quality management, that's what the WQM stands for. It's the Water Quality Management Permit Application due by January 1st, 2022, means that we have to move into final design of the all of that cluster of packages next year.
Are the segments, are they tunnelized or are they open cut? The Chartiers and Sawmill,
Those are tunnelized.
tunnelized.
Yes. So another, something I don't want to take for granted is just the definition of a basis of design report. So this is actually just off of the EPA website, that the basis of design report, it's developed by the engineers in the early stages of your design based on our project requirements. And then I added, because this was integral to our particular basis of design report, was the hydraulics, the geotechnical. We did over 70 deep borings, and then we did a high-level environmental screening of the proposed route. And then what it does is it just describes the approach that would take it from that 15% design through completion. And we did it. So we submitted this giant document to the agencies on October 1st. And Michelle has confirmed with the agencies that they received it, because transferring of documents that size in the age of COVID, or even without the age of COVID, isn't easy. So we did meet that obligation under the consent decree, and it was a significant milestone. And one of the things that the basis of design report has indicated is this estimated combined sewer overflow reduction. And this is why we're here, right? So phase 1, what I talked about was the wastewater treatment plant expansion up to 480. That is estimated to reduce 2.8 billion gallons of CSO reduction. Then you're going up to the phase 2, which is expanding the treatment plant to up to 600 MGD, and including the ORT, again, that's the Ohio River Tunnel segment, will reduce up another 1.1 billion. The ART, the Allegheny River Tunnel, is estimated to reduce 2.2 billion gallons of CSO reduction. And then the MON, which will be our last segment, is the 1.1. So that's an estimated 7.2 billion gallons of CSO reduction in a typical year. So it's good not to lose sight of the forcing function behind why we're doing all this. So this is the slide that I showed you last month, and this is what I'm going to use as the basis to sort of go into a little bit more detail for you.
Does the, I'm sorry, to
Yeah,
interrupt.
go ahead, please.
Does the 7.2 million reduction,
Billion.
billion reduction, does that bring us into compliance with the EPA requirements?
No.
Well, so after this interim phase, there's the post-construction monitoring.
Okay,
And so whenever we can demonstrate that the water quality monitoring meets, that will determine compliance.
okay.
So it's, yeah.
So this is an interesting graph. This is existing conditions. That shows that we're just below 9 billion.
Mhm.
If we were to do nothing by 2046, we would be over 10. But by implementing the interim measures, which is what we're talking about today, which is the requirements of the modified consent decree, which takes us to 2036, that's the estimated reduction shown with the ALCOSAN CSO, SSO, and then the same thing for the municipal CSO and SSO connections.
So
That after 2036
it's anticipated that all projects will be done by 2036?
of the modified consent decree, and then that'll be our commitment under the final measures to take that last chunk and get it down.
Gotcha.
Right. So this is the modified consent decree, and that this was the negotiated based on affordability. So remember all of it, to take it originally down to zero off the bat was $3.6 billion in 2020, in 2010 dollars, which was deemed unaffordable by our ratepayers. So the forcing function of the negotiation was to say, okay, what's the affordability threshold of our customer base? And that turned out to be 2 billion. So the negotiation was, okay, well, how can we spend our 2 billion to get the most for the bucks? And that's what the modified CD was.
Gotcha.
So there will be a phase 2, but it'll be after 2036 and after we do our post-construction monitoring to make sure we validate all of our, so.
Hey, Kim, it's Will Pickering from PWSA. Can you explain why the baseline would increase in 2046? Is that development? Is that aging infrastructure? Can you?
Yep, both population projections, aging infrastructure, and then just, doing nothing. So exacerbating the problems that we already know exist now, but not taking care of them.
Got it. Thanks.
Is that, yep, okay. So, okay, good.
Yes.
So this is the ORT. And it starts at the plant, which is the red sort of star in the upper left. And it basically follows our existing deep tunnel interceptor. Now this is the crossing to Chartiers Creek, like I told you about. And then this is the crossing over to the Sawmill Run to pick that up. And then otherwise you're following the Ohio River. The ORT right now is estimated to be 4.6 miles long. And it will go up to around Washington's Landing with this A62 being the last pickup point. And then I just, a quick statistic is just by building this segment, we will eliminate 415 overflows per year.
Wow.
Okay, and then we're gonna go a little deeper into the Allegheny, which, if you remember from my previous slide, the Allegheny will eliminate 2.2 billion gallons of CSO. The Allegheny is a wet place. So, and we're eliminating over 900 overflows in a typical year. And I know it seems like we're crossing the river a lot, but we're crossing the river because we're picking up really large overflows. So A42 all the way in the northern end is actually our largest overflow. And A22 is another one of our, I would say, top 5, Jan, top 5, right?
Yeah.
So the ART is a very wet place that has a lot of CSO flow. And then our last segment here is the MON. The MON would pick up sort of where the ORT finished and the ART started. Now, an interesting part of the Mon River Tunnel, it used to stop at M29, and we're asking to extend it all the way down to Sandcastle. So the plan right now would actually be to launch this Mon River Tunnel from the Sandcastle site, around Sandcastle, and then we would launch towards the Allegheny River. And in the wet weather plan, we had a long consolidation sewer planned through the south side. But what we realized was we could just put individual drops into the tunnel and really limit the disturbance to those communities through the south side and Southside Park. So that was sort of one of those advanced engineering mechanisms. Through modeling, we were able to say, you know, we could really limit the surface disruptions through the south side by making these individual drops into the tunnel. And then we will not come up through this entire segment. So this once it launches in Sandcastle, you will not see that tunnel boring machine again until it comes out on the, I guess, northern side of the Allegheny River. And there will not be any surface disruptions through this part, this crossover through Uptown. And we will be, by building this segment, we will be eliminating over 600 overflows per year. So this is the graph that I already showed. And I can't ignore the fact that we will need property, right? So work of this nature, we cannot accomplish it without acquiring some property. Specifically for our tunnel launch and retrieval sites, we have established protocol, and we've hired property consultants to help us through this process, as this is actually not something that we do every day. But most of the property the needs that we will see are subsurface easements. So those are those easements that are greater than 150 feet deep. We would contact the property owners, but they'll never know we're there. But we will have property needs, and I don't want to ignore that or not at least mention it. And then schedule-wise, like I said, we will be starting the ORT final design next year, getting into construction towards the end of 2023. And then we'll be in construction for a little bit on the ORT before we start the ART design, and then the MON will follow.
So are there chances for people to input on the final design of the tunnel?
Definitely.
That's still open?
Yeah, definitely. We haven't even hired the final design consultant teams yet.
Okay.
So in those final design consultant teams, there will be public meetings. There will be coordination with the stakeholder communities. Like that hasn't even started yet.
Okay.
And then there's also the opportunity for adaptive management. So you see here, the adaptive management windows are shown at the bottom. The ORT is sort of coming to an end of the adaptive management window, but there's plenty of time to pitch projects and solutions to change the sizing of the gray infrastructure with source control or other projects for the Allegheny and the Mon River tunnels. And that's why we will continue to coordinate with this committee and our member communities and through the GROW program and everything else that we do to make sure that we capitalize on the opportunities for adaptive management as we move to final design. And like the ART is not even going to final design until 2025.
So the the Ohio River Tunnel will be functional
Mhm.
prior to the other two tunnels.
Yes.
So that'll give ALCOSAN the opportunity to have the experience of the tunnel construction
That's,
and impact the plant as you plan the other two tunnels.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Kim, this is Darla Cravata. I have a quick question. How deep does the boring machine go?
So it's on average 150 feet deep. It's our topography that would change that. I mean, it never changes, but sometimes, we go under a large hill and it could be over 300 feet deep, but on average, it's about 150 feet deep.
And is the Allegheny side wetter than the Mon side? Which side, I mean, given all the work that ALCOSAN has done on starting at the source and controlling the source, I'm curious, which is the wetter side? Do you know?
Well, it's the size of those sheds up the Allegheny that are larger. The
Got
Mon
it.
just has smaller sewer sheds.
Okay.
And Darla, after some consideration, you're gonna be driving that tunnel when it goes 300 feet down. On behalf of the committee, we're putting you in that machine.
Well, Tim, I actually was going to say when we took a trip to Washington, D.C. and met with that water and sewer group down there, and their tunnel tweeted locations.
Wow.
So as DC was tunneling down in residential areas, the tunnel was tweeting. I have no idea how that worked, but I thought it was fascinating.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
don't think you can hear me. I'm
Yeah, Patty, we
labeled
can.
as Patty. I'm sorry. I had trouble getting into this call. One thing, do you know whether you're going to be trespassing on coal tunnel, residual coal tunnel areas? I know when we were looking at our geothermal system installation, we hit a unmapped, unnoted coal mine at 95 feet. So I'm wondering if you have good survey information about the possible intersection with former coal mines when you're down at that depth in these areas,
That's a very good question. And that's why we did over 70 borings in the advanced planning stage, and there will be more borings to come. We're trying to stay in solid rock.
Yeah.
And that was actually the reason why we tweaked the alignment a little bit, because we saw a little bit of like a split face of the rock layer up there, and that's not something we want to touch. So
Right.
to the extent that we have the choice, we're going to make the choice to stay in that solid rock.
Okay. Second question, the adaptive management options that are under consideration, is there a process for looking at those in watershed level coordination rather than municipal boundary level coordination, or is that a discussion for another topic?
I think that's a very valid discussion. I mean, we operate by the sewer shed.
Right.
So, we take that point of connection and then we map what is feeding flow into that point of connection. And when we identify one that we feel is unnecessarily wet, we coordinate with every community that's contributing to that shed.
Right.
And that's some of the work that Jan's staff is doing right now.
Okay, because I'm really interested in organizing, especially stormwater management systems around the watershed and the ecology of how that all flows, so that you can organize adaptive management, directives that are compliant with the watershed behavior. So I'm really interested in knowing who we talk to coordinate that kind of effort. Thank you.
On that point, should that go through Three Rivers or should that go directly to ALCOSAN?
Okay.
It's a collaboration, so, it's not just one person, obviously, that you.
Right.
Three Rivers has always been that.
The conduit.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah. I think we're trying to find, Patty, I think we're trying to make every effort to try to find ways to get as much stormwater out of
Exactly.
the system. And I think your point is well taken.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
This is Will from PWSA again. Can you walk through the rationale behind the realignment? I mean, that to me seems to be on the third tunnel. That seems to be what's gotten the most attention, and it looks like there aren't any drop shafts there. But was this a value engineering decision, geotechnical decision?
It was driven by the geotechnical, like that's where we found those split face borings down along the point. But it was also, that lower half of like the Mon Wharf, we weren't ever going to pick up any of those overflows. So it's also a property issue, right? I mean, it would be very hard to do this project adjacent to a stadium or in some of our most valuable land. So so the geotechnical really made us start to think about it, but then public pressure and constructability also weighed pretty heavily in just shifting that up, knowing that we weren't experiencing any significant overflows in that bottom half, and that they weren't slated for pickup in the modified CD or the later one. Does that make sense, Will? Or
Yeah, that's helpful. And just another question is, are any of the tunnel segments coming online before they're fully completed?
No.
Okay.
So when a tunnel boring machine is brought back up out of the ground, do you keep that shaft? Is that a service shaft, or do you engineer backfill?
I think that I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I'll have to find that out.
That's
for
fine.
you.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big hole in the ground.
Right. And we wouldn't need all that. I think that we would use the space to create the shaft size that we need, and then it would be filled in.
Okay, maybe.
Those are my thoughts, but I'll get a real answer.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Sharon again.
Is that it, Kim?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, any other questions for Kim before we move on?
Into this.
I don't know.
Hearing none, we'll hear from Jeanne Oliver now on the region.
Yes, this is Catherine Sapp. I wanted to just say to Kim, you did a very good presentation. It was very friendly, and I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. All right, I just want to make sure I'm muted. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Jeanne Oliver on regionalization and transfer agreements. Jeanne?
Thank you.
Sorry, Jan.
Appreciate everybody's patience as we set up the technology here.
Thank you. So we're going to go back over some of the information about regionalization. You know, what is it? Why did it even come to be? The process that we went through to form regionalization program, the program's progress to date, and you know, what are some of the next steps and some outstanding issues. So in 2008, ALCOSAN entered into its consent decree with the EPA, DEP, and the health department. And then shortly after that, the municipalities entered into their municipal orders. It was our municipal advisory committee at the time that encouraged ALCOSAN to look at regionalizing more. And so we formed a stakeholder panel. That panel was facilitated by the Allegheny Conference on Economic Development. And it had representation from the environmental community, municipal representatives, government, and ALCOSAN helped to assist in the process. It culminated into the Cohen report. It became the product of the regional stakeholder panel. From that point, the organization called Connect and Three Rivers formed what is referred to as the Sewer Regionalization Implementation Committee, or SRIC as they referred to themselves. And from that point, they determined how we would do the implementation. The committee recommended approaches to achieve regionalization. And in 2016 to 2017,
It's on some automatic thing.
so this is the unfriendly version. Where she starts to swear. So in 2016, 2018, ALCOSAN began to assess the regionalized source. And then in 2019, we began the transfer agreement in the process. In 2020, the transfers have all been distributed and the repairs continue.
Yeah, after I'm done with this,
So this is the ALCOSAN system as it exists today. The interceptors, the sewers that we are currently responsible are indicated by the yellow or gold line. So that is 3 interceptors along the main rivers, the Ohio, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela.
this is over at 4. And when
And
it's,
then sewers along Charters Creek, Sawmill Run, and Turtle Creek. We do have 30 miles of deep tunnel system that exists today. And that's the reason why we are so limited in having pump stations. And pump stations and sewage are a very difficult combination because of all the mechanics associated with pump stations and the corrosive environment in sewage facilities. So that SHRIP committee kind of developed what should be considered for regionalization, because we looked at a wide array of sewers to transfer to ALCOSAN. And what we ended up with is multi-municipal sewers. So sewers that collect more than one municipality's sewage flow. And then a sewer that was 10 inches or larger in diameter. And that equated into 265 miles of sewer to transfer over to ALCOSAN. Along those 265 miles of sewer, there were 8 existing facilities. 4 are equalization tanks in Gertie's Run and Penn Hills, and then 4 were pump stations also scattered throughout the service area and along those multi-municipal trunk sewers. There were also 6,200 manholes and 77 diversion structures that were located along those multi-municipal sewers that would transfer to ALCOSAN. This is depicting what that would look like. So again, the ALCOSAN facilities are shown by the gold lines, and what infrastructure would be meeting that criteria of multi-municipal and 10 inches in diameter or greater are shown by the green lines. Now the pump stations that would become regionalized facilities are shown by the fuchsia triangles, and the aqua cylindrical shape is identifying the existing equalization tanks, again shown along that 265 plus miles of sewer. Why regionalize? It has been identified that there could be an improvement in the management of costs, maintenance and improvements, that maintaining a sewer system these days is not going to get easier. It's just getting more complicated. So it has been determined that there would be an economy of scales achieved by that, and that the region would benefit from that. It also promotes collaboration between ALCOSAN and its customer municipalities. There are streams in the sewer system. There is I&I reduction that needs to occur. There's green infrastructure, and there's also parallel or upgraded sewers that need to be constructed to contribute to the wet weather plan. There's a disparity of income in the region. Back in 2010, there's the median household incomes ran between 18,000 at the low end and 220,000 at the higher end. One of the things that seems to happen is that the lower end stays the same, but the higher end seems to increase. So the divide is increasing. There are still 140 municipalities, or I'm sorry, 140 overflows on the municipal sewer system. So again, as I mentioned, in order to work with the existing wet weather plan, those sewers may need to be upgraded or a parallel sewer constructed to eliminate those overflows. And as Kim was talking about with adaptive management and integrated watershed approaches, having a regionalized system improves our opportunity to do that, to take advantage of that integrated approach. I just want to throw this historic context in there. I think it's worth recognizing that, you know, some of the first sewers were constructed in the streets to collect stormwater. And then when indoor plumbing became available, that plumbing was tied into the existing storm sewers, and that was your combined sewers. They were often routed along streams and rivers to take advantage of the gravity sewers versus pump stations. The local streams were often culverted, and that's how we ended up with streams tied into the sewer system. But before the construction of ALCOSAN, untreated sewage discharged to the area rivers and streams. Regionalization evaluation was done to respond to requests, to prepare for the future, to determine the pros and cons, identify the obstacles, and explore alternatives. This is, you know, we were looking at a huge infrastructure program to the magnitude of $3.6 billion. 560 million of that was to be spent on municipal sewer improvements from their municipal feasibility studies. So it was all these things that required us to take a look at options for expanding ALCOSAN's role. And we did look at, you know, what were the regulatory benefits, you know, what were the pros and cons of each one of these: environmental, organization, legal, was there going to be stakeholder acceptance? How would operation, maintenance, and management occur? And then again, the financial magnitude of it. Was there a cost savings to be experienced by doing this? It was a joint effort. There were multiple people involved in it, and they recommended strategies for implementation and action items. So the progress to date, we have an enormous amount of meetings. We did not do this in a vacuum. We held meetings initially to talk about regionalization and identified all those bullets that I mentioned before: environmental, operational, financial. And then we moved into can you give us any information that you have on your existing sewer system? And that's mostly so that we can operate and maintain your sewer systems, the municipal sewer systems, as well as we operate the existing ALCOSAN system. So there was extensive coordination and collaboration with the 83 municipalities collecting data. And then as we collected the data, we evaluated it. There was CCTV work collected, or CCTV data collected on 230 miles of sewer system. Actually, we're collecting additional miles right now while we had this dry period. But when we did the initial phase of that, there was a lot of surcharging in the system. We wanted to have the pipe 30% or less full so that we could get a good vision of what's going on in there. And so all of that information was collected and put into an asset management software database. In this process, defects were identified. Some of them were extreme. You know, we identified them as significant or critical, and they were ones that the municipalities are required to address prior to transfer. Some of them, they were health and safety issue, and the municipality was notified immediately if that situation existed. So what you're seeing here is a clay sewer down the valley, in a stream valley in a municipality. And so it wouldn't take much for that pipe to get washed out. So that municipality was notified immediately. There's on the last picture to the right, on the top, there's a board in the pipe. And so that was notified the municipality, because it wouldn't take long before that would be causing basement backups. You have a rock poking through the top of a sewer on the bottom left, then a missing manhole, and then a pipe getting ready to collapse from longitudinal cracks. So those other sewers, those are sewers that are required to be repaired by the municipality and part of what is in their defect reports, which also include the transfer agreements. Now, these are more long-term defects, and these are defects that would be repaired by ALCOSAN as they would become part of our capital improvements program. The evaluations that would be done is how much flow the pipe carries, how much that would impact bypass pumping. Would it be more expensive to fix the repair as part of an emergency, or, is there a reason to get in there and do it before that becomes an emergency? So these are, where we're at. And these long-term defects are 10-fold the short-term defects in terms of cost. I could share, some of the estimates with you, but they didn't address access very well, or the municipality may differ in what they would like to do in terms of the repair. But I think that the approach to the repair is still going to always be that the short-term repairs are 1/10 of the cost of the long-term defect repairs going forward. What also would be included as part of the regionalization are the wet weather collection system improvements. So these are, you've got 140 overflows that will still discharge. And so parallel or upgraded sewers would need to be constructed down to the ALCOSAN proposed regionalized sewer system. So that is shown on this map in this particular sewer shed. This is M42, so this is streets run. And the lime green is showing where parallel or upgraded sewer systems would need to be installed. We are currently working with these municipalities to reduce flows, so you would hopefully reduce the wet weather needs. There's an opportunity to actually take some significant I&I out of the sewer system in this sewer shed. We're doing that in combination with the CCTV tapes that were gathered through the regionalization process, and also the GROW program to help offset the cost to the municipalities. We're moving it from a structural repair to an I&I reduction improvement. These are the defect reports. It compiles the results of the CCTV analysis and put that into a defect report that shows you exactly where that defect is, where it's located, and what the repair may be. So that was shared with the municipalities. We met with each of them regarding the findings of those defect repairs. Also included in those large binders is the transfer agreement. So they were prepared and distributed. A summary of the contents was provided to the municipal solicitors for comments. We are negotiating still with the municipal solicitors. There are things, language in the agreement that tries to address title defects. So in some cases, a sewer was constructed without the easement or the right-of-way. And the initial committee was very cognizant of making sure that ALCOSAN was protected in this process, that, while we were taking on this huge endeavor, it still wasn't going to become a major source of problem. So some of the municipalities may actually have this right-of-way by adverse possession, but ALCOSAN, have just getting the facilities would not. So there's a lot of back and forth about that type of things. Things that happened while the municipalities maintained the sewer system and things that happen now that ALCOSAN would have the facility. So we're just trying to work out language that would require your assistance over a certain period of time. And what we presented at this point, we went from 21 years to we're at 12 years, that we have sent that information to the municipal solicitors, as that we would still need your assistance in getting right-of-ways or easements, or if there was, a connection that was causing a flooding of a business or a home, that, there would still be some requirements from the municipality to participate in that solution. So the next final steps here are, the municipalities are continuing to work on the repairs. We did put together several contracts that the municipalities could have piggybacked with that. We do have, I know Mary Ellen, you asked at the, Ms. Ramage, you asked at the last meeting about that whole financing matter. And I did check with our finance and administration, and you do have a period where you can pay for the repairs for 12 months, and then beyond that, 36 months at ALCOSAN's bond rate interest rate.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And then, we'll finalize these transfer agreements and we'll collaborate on source reduction and sewer upgrades. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Any questions? Jeanne?
This is Ruth Ann Omer. I have a question. Jeanne, what do you think is the biggest holdup or stumbling block on the agreements at this point? Is it because of that responsibility, the line, the number of years, or what do you think is really the holdup, I guess?
I think that, they don't want to be on the hook for an extended period of time. But, we did inspect the sewers and we did require the repairs, but there are just, a lot of certain things that you're unaware of, how a certain problem can impact things on the surface. And, there are, businesses and residential impacts. And, we want to treat all of our municipalities. I mean, that is really how the repair of the sewers came into the picture here, is that we were trying to level the playing field, to not, to have there not be some major disadvantage for having maintained your sewer system for decades, and then somebody else's who did not, ALCOSAN walks in and repairs their sewer system. So we did try to do this inspection and require these repairs to do that leveling of the playing field. And I think easements, it's there are actually very few easements and right-of-way documents that were provided to us as part of the transfer. So, when you're dealing with the railroads, that comes into play.
Very few municipalities had easements that showed a meets and bounds description of the sanitary sewer trunk mains. So the easements exist by prescription for the most part, but it's going to be a lot easier, I think, for the municipality to step in and assist ALCOSAN when there is an easement issue. So if grandma's basement's getting backed up it's easier for us to tell grandma, hey, we need to dig up your yard or you're going to have a problem here. I think that kind of makes sense.
And you were involved in that process, and I really think there was a thought of, let's make sure that this isn't something that's.
Yeah, we had to be fair. The municipalities had to be fair to ALCOSAN because you're transferring an asset that has a pretty significant liability with it. But I mean, you got to be the person who deals with the resident where you can.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate the answer. I just was curious, you are correct in all the things you've said, and you think we would have kind of, moved on from some of that by now, but thank you.
There is a meeting scheduled, from my understanding, with the solicitors, a Teams call on Friday at 11 o'clock. So let's hope that that will help to move things forward.
Has the EPA evidence that they're acceptable to this level of regionalization through this agreement?
Well, remember, ALCOSAN's consent decree requires a good faith effort to transfer 200 miles of municipal sewer system.
Right.
That is why we do such a good documentation of the efforts that we have made, that if it doesn't transfer, that we have made a good faith effort to do so. And
This regionalization plan is a pretty good idea.
Smart guy must have thought of that.
Can I ask if you've gotten any more transfer agreements since the last time we met? I think you had 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, we haven't. We had Monroeville for one point of connection. And we had one from Collier Municipal Authority and South Fayette. It was a sewer that didn't have any defects on it, so it was a pretty simple transfer. But then Collier Municipal Authority dissolved, and the sewer system is now the jurisdiction of the township. So we'll have to circle back to that. We have been circling back with the municipal engineers to find out where they're at with the repairs.
How close do you think we are with a resolution of the legal agreement, a final resolution of the legal agreement?
Some of the conversations that I have had with some of the key solicitors have been very positive.
Okay. Is there an anticipated timeline by ALCOSAN to complete the transfers?
Well, every year we try to budget for it, thinking that it will happen within that year, and our folks will have that responsibility to operate and maintain.
So it's reasonable that we would look to try to make all these transfers within the 2021 calendar year.
That would be hopeful.
And I think to the advisory committee, I think that's where we're going to be instrumental in trying to help move that process along by encouraging the municipalities that we are in contact with to try to develop a resolution through their solicitor to agree to this agreement ultimately. And so
Thank you.
That's something we can wear.
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions for Jan? Hearing none, we'll move on to a general discussion of the advisory committee work. Ian, is this you or?
No.
Is there anything on the part of all the committee? Is there anything that you want us to begin to move into for consideration to have the ALCOSAN staff report on? Anything out there?
Well, it also might help to have our solicitor talk about what the requirements are under the bylaws.
Sure, let's do that.
Sure. The one requirement we do have that is coming up is essentially an annual report. The last section of the bylaws says, in addition to recommendations on matters brought to its attention by the executive director, the advisory committee shall prepare an annual report of its activities for delivery to the board prior to December 31st each year. This would be somewhat similar to your annual reports you get from your planning commission at the municipal level. It's required by the MPC. It would likely be just a summary of the meetings that you've had, recognizing we had an interruption into this over the spring and summer, but it can also include just copies of the meeting minutes, just to let the board know this is how what we've been doing. We'd be targeting essentially the board meeting in December, and it would have to be a conversation. Do we want to have the chair come and give a quick presentation, deliver that report, or if it would just be submitted in writing? But we wanted to bring that to your attention now, just so you weren't surprised in November and realize it's due in the next couple of weeks at that point.
And that's fine. I think however the board wants it to be presented to them is fine with myself and I think my colleagues. And I think because of the COVID interruption to the entire event this year, and again, my apologies, it was a tough decision. Jeanne and I had talked about whether we should have meetings or not. We're trying to get these meetings and we would love to have everybody back in the room. Most of this year was an effort by the part of the committee and my colleagues to try to catch up with where ALCOSAN was and to get reports from the ALCOSAN staff that let us know what their long-term and short-term plans are. And they have been very instrumental and instructive in that, and we appreciate that. So we haven't veered off as an advisory committee to anything other than a learning process for 2020. So I think that would be the bulk of the report. And unless my colleagues feel that there should be anything else in the report, and I open it up to the floor for that consideration.
All the,
I think that's great. If you could just do a little, oh, I'm sorry.
Go
Mary
ahead.
Ellen, maybe just a little summary like you just said and include our minutes because we haven't met that much and it's been a lot of catch up in education. I think that would be fine.
Good. Thank you, Mary Ellen. Also, again, to my colleagues on the board, I'm personally struggling with trying to bring everybody back in. This is, there are areas within the ALCOSAN structure that we could probably meet. Is there a burning desire to meet, or is this going to be okay? You know, we may be headed into a more serious COVID relationship. And for those of you who aren't here, I'm sitting in a room with everybody's mask. I feel like I'm at Fukushima. But I mean, as soon as you come on property here at ALCOSAN, everybody's got a mask on. There's anticipation that this may get worse in the next coming months. So, if any of my colleagues feel a need to come to this meeting, please let me know. And my email, and I encourage you to email me with your opinions, is trogers, ROGERS, @shaler.org. Please reach out to me, 412-486-9700, and I'll try to convey your concerns and wishes back to the ALCOSAN staff so we can deal with those. Next item is a new business, is a letter from the community groups. I'm going to offer my opinion here. And again, I'd like to hear my colleagues. You are in copy of a letter from the Pittsburgh United, Sierra Club, Pittsburgh for Public Transit, and a number of other agencies, and a direct letter written to Arletta regarding their concerns over changes made in the plan and whether those changes were vetted publicly. I'm not sure, again, my personal opinion is I'm not sure that the advisory committee wants to wade into or get in between ALCOSAN and the various agencies and committees and groups with environmental groups within Allegheny County and beyond in that discussion. I think that that's a discussion that should be held by ALCOSAN itself and its staff. And then if something needs to be brought back to our committee for an opinion, then that's fine. But I'm not sure that we want to pick up that argument. Is there anybody who feels in opposition to that? Hearing none, and I appreciate that. And again, if you do, feel free to contact me so I can make that a discussion.
Excuse me, I'm having trouble
Sure.
figuring out how to make my presence known. I would have the one caveat on that issue about making sure the advisory group here is made aware of significant concerns of the public that we represent, which includes the environmental organizations to some, great extent. And I don't know that it is appropriate for us to completely ignore concerns where people are looking for an amplified voice on some issues of concern. I don't know that I'm willing to just say the advisory board, such as we are, is not interested in the concerns of the environmental community or other communities who may have issues they would like to air as they're presented to the ALCOSAN board. I think it's appropriate for us to know at least what those concerns are and have an opportunity to discuss whether or not we wish to investigate further or raise some of those concerns upon our advice to the board.
I agree. I think you articulated that better than I did. I think we should know about it.
Yeah.
I think we should not only know the concerns of these agencies, but we should also be made aware of the response made by ALCOSAN to them.
Exactly.
And then if they need to be discussed, and I would encourage my colleagues to bring up those in these meetings. If there's something you want to discuss, please let me know that you want that on the agenda, or let Jeanne know that you want it on the agenda so that we can have a full discussion about that. But I would encourage you also to give the chance to ALCOSAN staff to know about that before we go to a meeting so they can prepare for a proper vetting of any discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Under public comment, Jeanne has a presentation. We would like to recognize two of our members.
Yes, I just wanted to salute two of the members of the advisory committee. The 2020 Governor's Awards for Environmental Excellence had 60 applicants from across the Commonwealth. 14 awards total were handed out, and two of them went to members of our advisory committee. One was to the Forest Hills Net Zero Energy Municipal Building, which we all know was Patty DeMarco's baby from the word go, and she was the driving force to make it happen. So it's really, if you haven't been to that building, it's really a wonderful building to visit, and it's green clear through and deodorized too. The other award went to the Etna Eco District, and of course our manager of Etna, Mary Ellen Ramage, was the driving force, I think, behind the Eco District. And it's just, again, they're the first Eco District in the world. And so it's about time the governor decided to give them an award. But we're really honored to have such a high-level advisory committee, and really want to take advantage of your expertise to help us do the job better. So congratulations, Patty and Mary Ellen.
Thank you very much, Jeanne. It's all partnerships. A lot of people around the table and on the committee and inside the community. So thank you, and congratulations to Patty too.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I must also say the same. This was a project that took 4 years and involved a lot of people, including 4 different charrettes among the community members who were really pressing for green solutions. And it did include stormwater management features, and I'm more than happy to give you a virtual tour of the building at any time. And congratulations also to Mary Ellen Ramage. She's my hero. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Very good. Anything else from my colleagues? Hearing none, we are very proud of Mary Ellen and Ben and for what you guys have done. To both of you, congratulations on behalf of the colleagues, and hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is November 17th. We look